If you live in any European city, you'll be aware of the presence of relics of the Roman Empire. From the remains of Serdica in Sofia, Hadrian's Wall in the north of England, and a number of distinct amphitheatres around the world. It's clear that the influence of the Roman Empire was far-reaching. Heck, the language I'm speaking to you right now was heavily influenced by Latin, the language spoken by the Romans. If you live in a republic, your system of government has its roots in that used by the Romans. But how did the Roman Empire come to be? What was its origin? The Roman Empire was established in 27 BC and lasted until its end in the 5th century. But before the empire, we had the Roman Republic, which can be traced back to 500 BC. The Republic's democratic government reflected the bifurcation that was present in its society, which was divided into two classes: the patricians, who were the wealthy elites, and the plebeians, the common people. And although initially only the patricians had access to public office, for example becoming a senator, as time went on, the plebeians gained more political influence, and by 287 BC, the very last laws restricting the political participation of the plebeians was removed. As the Romans warred against surrounding city-states, it insisted that its defeated enemies provided soldiers for military campaigns, such as the Punic Wars, as well as wars against neighbouring Greece. This allowed it to conquer even more territories around the Mediterranean. However, despite its external conquests, resentments were brewing within Rome. Now, fast forward a few centuries later, in 46 BC, we encounter Julius Caesar, who, after a number of political maneuvers and military campaigns, finds himself as the ruler of the still Republican Rome and is appointed dictator for 10 years. 2 years go by, and in 44 BC, he further concentrates his power by appointing himself dictator in perpetuity. But this does not go down well with the senators, who were worried about the stability of the Republic and plotted his assassination, stabbing him to death in the Roman Senate house. This, however, had the opposite effect of what the senators envisioned. Julius Caesar's death marked the beginning of the end of the Roman Republic and the start of a civil war which saw a number of officers content to fill the power vacuum. Strongest of these rivals were Mark Antony and another man called Augustus Caesar, more commonly known as Octavian. We'll call him Octavian from now on. Octavian happened to be Caesar's grandnephew and adopted son and heir. These two, along with the third man, Marcus Lepidus that is, initially formed a coalition known as the Second Triumvirate, and together they defeated the conspirators responsible for the assassination of Julius Caesar. Eventually, however, they turned on each other in a bitter rivalry, which after the death of Marcus Lepidus climaxed at the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, where Mark Antony's troops were defeated. Despite the defeat, Mark Antony escaped with his romantic companion, Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt at the time, taking what was left of his troops with him. Well, those that hadn't defected to the side of Octavian. The fallout of this defeat led Mark Antony to commit suicide, stabbing himself in the stomach. In addition, although there are conflicting reports about the cause of death, Cleopatra is reported to have killed herself. Coming out victorious, Octavian consolidated his power, paying his generals handsomely, giving away land and killing his potential rivals, and by 27 BC, it was done. Octavian had become the Roman Empire's first emperor. To appear more palatable to the people and the Senate, he avoided behaviours that could be misinterpreted for arrogance, such as disrespecting the Senate or disrespecting the customs of Rome's ancestors. Whilst not officially a magistrate at any given point, he wielded substantial power and took on the title of Augustus. His 40-year reign ushered in the beginning of a relatively peaceful period in Roman history known as the Pax Romana, literally translated, Roman peace. Octavian played a massive role in the formation of the new Rome, and his decisions while in power laid the foundations that assured the stability of this relatively peaceful period. Political stability during this period allowed land and sea trade to boom. Silk from the Far East, cotton from Egypt, silver from Britain. Remember the saying, all roads lead to Rome? Well, it was during this period that the infrastructure such as roads and iconic landmarks such as the Colosseum and the Pantheon were built. The Pax Romana period also brought us the poetic works of Virgil and Ovid. Credit where it's due, Octavian was instrumental in ushering in this era of unprecedented peace and economic prosperity. Octavian's method of choosing a successor was the principle of hereditary, thus commencing the rule of the five Julio-Claudian emperors: Octavian, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and Nero. Later, another group of emperors known as the Flavians, who came to power after a civil war that culminated in the suicide of Nero. Both families of emperors had individuals who were despotic and insane, committing acts of matricide, forced suicides, executions, and religious persecutions. The assassination of the last Flavian, Domitian, by court officials in 96 AD led the Senate to, for the first time, elect Rome's new emperor, a man by the name of Nerva, who had served under various emperors and was already in his 60s. In 98 AD, Nerva made the decision to select his successor by a different method to his predecessors, by adoption. He chose a young general, Trajan, and after barely 2 years in office, after Nerva's death, Trajan was Rome's new emperor. This new method set a precedent and ushered in a new era of emperors known as the Five Good Emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and lastly, Marcus Aurelius, who adopted his son Commodus as his successor. As we've seen, the Roman Empire's history is one filled with uprisings, assassinations, and the violent acts of despotic rulers. But amidst all this were several decades of peace, prosperity, and economic progress, as seen during the Pax Romana period. And while most of the topic today has dwelt on the acts of emperors and rulers of the empire, it's important to remember that the Roman Empire was one built on the back of its regular citizens, and decisions made by its rulers affected them the most, be it the loss of a brother or a son in any one of its many bloody battles, or the forced enslavement of members of its population. The impact of the Roman Empire was far-reaching and extends still today, and it's worth remembering all the little ways in which this ancient civilization shaped the modern world.